Hey, and welcome to the latest episode of the NewIn Podcast. I'm Cathi Harrison, and thank you so much for joining us for this episode. It is going to be an absolutely phenomenal one. So I normally start with a bit of an interesting fact about me, and one fact is that I've had a podcast before. We used to have a podcast called That Mint Podcast. And the interesting bit about that is back in February 2021, so 5 years ago, our current guest was previously a guest on the other episode. Ola joined myself and Jo to discuss what she was doing at the time, helping people understand money. There was a very new role of a finfluencer, which she was very much doing in social media and really bringing finance to the general public. And her career has just absolutely flown since then, not least with the very recent completion of her diploma in financial planning. So let's find out a little bit more about her path over the last 5 years and where she's heading to next.
A huge welcome to NewIn, Ola Majekodunmi. Delighted to have you here.
Very excited to chat today.
Yeah, thank you so much. This podcast, as people might know by now, with a few episodes in, it's all about meeting the people that are changing the future of finance. So excited to hear how that applies to you, Ola, a bit more today.
Very excited to share.
Well, okay, let's start then. So if somebody was to write a one-line headline on what you do today, what would it say?
So I am a now qualified financial advisor, public speaker, and founder of All Things Money, which is a personal finance platform that teaches young adults how to manage their finances effectively.
I'm delighted to hear that you've passed your final exam.
It's been it was a long slog, but I'm glad it's all done now.
What do you remember being your first sort of experiences and influences of money?
Yeah, good question. So my mum has always been really, really good at managing money. So I think that naturally rubbed off on me. I think my first time really experiencing money and what it meant to actually work hard for the cash you have was when I was 17, had my first time job. I had also just passed my driving test at the time. And I remember being like, oh gosh, my car insurance is so expensive, but I'm going to have to find the money to pay it off every month. So I think that is when I realized, what a direct debit is, how I'm going to now have to budget my first paycheck and things. So yeah, that kind of grew. And then I went to university when I realized, okay, the budgeting I was doing before wasn't really that serious compared to now because I've got rent. And then obviously went into graduating and now running my own business. So then managing money is completely different to when I have my first time job now.
Yeah, gosh. That's what was it you did at university?
I studied business management, funnily enough. But at the time, I didn't really know I always knew I wanted to run a business, but what that business looked like, I had no idea. And I think coming to uni, I then thought, actually, I would much rather be working for myself rather than have an employer. Again, didn't really still know what that looked like. And then I hate to say it, but I then just fell into All Things Money. So yeah, I did business management at university, graduated in lockdown, had plans to move to Australia, but obviously couldn't happen, sadly, thanks to COVID. So I taught myself how to invest in the stock market. And then off the back of investing, I realised how quick and easy it is for people to get invested and actually make that start. And so I wanted to teach other young people how to do the same. And All Things Money was born. But I will say, studying business management and running a real business are two very different things.
Oh, really? So what surprised you?
I think because my business started predominantly on social media, I didn't really learn about social media marketing, what that looks like, content creation. I think content creation now compared to when I was at university wasn't really a thing. You had YouTubers, but you didn't have like Instagrammers or TikTokers. So it's kind of like I've just had to learn on the journey, and then also realizing you can monetize a platform just of having like a following. Again, you wouldn't have learned that in business management during, back in like 2015, 2016. So yeah, it's very interesting how times have changed.
Yeah. Do you enjoy that side of it?
I do sometimes. That's my politically correct answer.
What's the unpolitically correct one?
It's hard. And I think people sometimes have the perception that creating content online is really easy, but there's a lot that comes with it. There's a lot of negative comments that you have to battle. There's days where you don't want to film, but you have to be in front of a camera. Algorithms as well. Algorithms always changing. You always want to be, I guess, front of mind for everyone, but everyone's consuming content, everyone's creating content. So it's like, how do you break through that noise? And I think that's really hard. But I think there's content creation, which I do, but there's other aspects of my job which I love way more. So yeah.
I understand that. I was thinking that's what I hear from people when they talk about that have to make content to compete and be visible, like you say. But the negative comments, even if you're really confident, really self-assured, it can be a difficult thing.
I think finance is such a hard one because there's such a grey line, as I'm sure you know, in terms of, what's guidance, what's advice. And I feel like there's also bad players in the space that we operate in. So it's kind of like you don't want to be pitted in that same category as those who are probably spouting harmful advice. So there's a lot you have to kind of battle, which is why I think as much as I do content creation, I don't mind it. I do very much prefer like hosting workshops and talking and doing the public speaking.
Yes, well, that's what I was just going to ask you next. So tell us a little bit about those.
Outside of content creation, I have a podcast, which I love doing. So I've been podcasting for nearly 5 years now, which is crazy. And then, do public speaking a lot. So I do workshops for university, colleges, organizations. And then I also host live events for my community. And I think it's funny because sometimes you can compare yourself to how many followers you have to other people. But when you actually see your community in front of you in real life, have actually purchased tickets, it really, really is rewarding. And so, that's probably like the biggest highlight of the things I do.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, that sounds incredible. And I can imagine it's a completely different atmosphere and energy when you're delivering something, like you said, that people have intentionally gone to be a part of.
Definitely.
So I can understand that.
And I think it's made me realise there is a space for me in the industry. And I think it's funny, I came into the personal finance space at 22. I got met with a lot of resistance when wanting to pitch my services, pitch what I do. I had a lot of older white men telling me that I had no experience, I have no knowledge in the industry. And it's nice now, which is the main reason why I did my diploma, is to add that credibility, show that I do have the knowledge, and I guess curb those feelings of imposter syndrome because people like to tell you can't do it. So, I think that was a big motivating factor as to why I did my diploma, to be honest.
I love that because whatever the type of energy is that we receive, if we can turn it into something that spurs us on, all the better. It would be a travesty, when somebody says, you shouldn't be here. If someone was like, yeah, all right then, I'll leave. Yeah. Thank goodness people don't. And like you say, I think the more stories people hear about that, and I think there's so much has changed that the people coming in and new people that are from all different ages and education and backgrounds. I think people can afford to be more courageous and bold and feel like there's more arms behind them than perhaps you might have felt before.
100%. I think so. And I also think social media makes it a lot easier, like, platforms like LinkedIn, like you can visibly see who's in that space now. So a lot of us can assume that, our preconceptions might be the case. But actually, if you do go out, you network and you get yourself into industry networking events, you realise there is more representation that you'd like to think. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but it is definitely more diverse than I originally thought before I was in the industry.
So, setting up a business, for some people, I think you get very entrepreneurial people who just jump straight in, where others that would cause them intense amount of panic. So when you decided you were going to go into personal finance, from that blank piece of paper, what were the steps that you took so that you now have the business that you're running today?
Good question. So I graduated university in March 2020, and all that summer, I was very naive to think that lockdown was only going to last a couple of months. Obviously, it lasted way longer, and Australia.
We all were.
Australia basically never opened its borders. So it was only that September did I think, okay, I'm going to continue growing all things money, but take on a job in events and bookings just to kind of tide me over until I can go traveling in the January. The January never came. So I ended up working in that industry for a year, and then dropped down to part-time. And then after 6 months, that part-time was no longer enough for me to kind of juggle the business as well. So I've been doing this now for nearly 6 years, which is crazy, and self-employment for nearly 4. It's been an interesting journey. And I think with the business, as a business owner, you just kind of roll with the punches. There's always peaks, there's troughs, and it's just learning how to kind of ride through that. And it's even scarier now because I have a mortgage. So it's daunting, but just got to trust that it will all work out.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think any business owner's got to have that in common of really being able to back yourself. Is there any advice that you'd give to anyone else who was looking to do something similar?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say the reason why I'm probably not having sleepless nights as a business owner is because I have a certain amount of savings. And I feel like anyone that works in finances will probably be great at telling their clients that, but probably forget to do that themselves. And so I think having that buffer where okay, 6-7 months, if God forbid I don't have any income coming in, I'm kind of protected. So I think that's the biggest part. And I think that's why I wasn't too scared of quitting my job at the time, now getting a mortgage, because I know I've got at least 10 months worth of savings that, I can kind of fall back on if I need to. I think that's the biggest thing. And then also making sure there's people in your support circle that motivate you or encourage you to take that step. It was my mum that was like, you can hand in your resignation, and also remember that no decision is final, because she was like, if you quit your job and all things may doesn't work out, you just get another job. And I was like, oh yeah. I think a lot of us have the habit of thinking that any decision we make is a final decision, and that's not the case. I think life is very flexible. We are very malleable individuals and stuff. So I think it's about remembering that. So yeah, I think those are my 2 top tips.
Yes, brilliant. I love those, especially the second one. I think that's my attitude to life as well.
Yeah.
There's no decision is final. You can always
Yeah.
you make another decision from that point that moves you forward. So,
and this is it. And I think that's also what encouraged me to do the diploma, because now I know I have a backup that, if I'm no longer wanting to be a business owner, if I no longer want to sit in front of a camera, I can always find hopefully a desk job somewhere else.
what was do you remember your first client, first paying client, and what it felt like?
I do. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to get rich posting on Instagram. I'm not, again, still rich yet, but my first paying client was this brand called Rocket. I think at the time they were a budgeting app. They don't exist anymore, sadly, but I remember they paid me £100 to post on Instagram, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've hit the jackpot. And so yeah, I will always remember my first brand deal with them, because I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can actually get paid for this. And that was after months of reaching out to all these big brands that, thinking little old me with maybe 1,000 followers at the time they would be interested in working with, and they weren't. So when I finally bagged this first paying client, I was like, oh, I've made it. And so yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and obviously it continues. So yeah, I'm very grateful.
And the whole rest of your career, I think life is a series of firsts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ones that we don't even know, we haven't had yet.
Yeah.
Are there any others that stick out in your mind, like first, moments where you thought?
So another first that sticks out is when I hosted my very first live event. I sold out 50 tickets for my very first event. And yeah, again, like I mentioned earlier, just seeing that community in front of me on a rainy Wednesday evening, coming out into London to hear me speak, it was just amazing. So yeah, very, very grateful for that opportunity as well.
What is it that you like about the live events?
Nothing beats in real life connections. And I'm sure many other people who do have a following can agree that we get very used to numbers and thinking these numbers aren't great. But actually, if I had 50,000 people in front of me, I'd be like, oh my goodness, because I know how I feel when I have 70 people in front of me. So yeah, it's just nothing beats in real life connection, to be honest.
You're right, nothing beats it. And with those live events as well, is there, do you ever get any anxiety, or is it like you switch on, or do you get any anxiety about doing that live stuff?
Beforehand, if my mum and my sister listen to this podcast, they'll be like, yes, she does. Beforehand, 100%, I think I'm very good at overthinking what a situation is going to look like. But on stage, when I'm finally in my mojo, that's when I'm like, oh, I'm really doing what I love most. And so, yeah, I think that hopefully radiates when I am speaking on stage or I'm speaking in a video, and you can hopefully see my passion for what I do, why I do it, and why I enjoy it, to be honest. So, yeah, I think, when I'm actually speaking and I'm doing my thing, yes, but beforehand, there's always those first bit of nerves, isn't there?
Yeah, and that's normal. I mean, I've seen some of your stuff and it does radiate out of you. Is there something that you ask your, own clients or ask your own communities and audiences that you think, sort of secretly in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I should ask myself that more often?
Right, without tooting my own horn, I am pretty good across all areas. The only thing that I do need to jump back into now that I'm in my flat is go back to contributing to my pension. So I paused from August to up until now last year whilst I was doing the home buying process, because as I'm sure anyone that's purchased their very first home, it is expensive. And so I was very mindful of, okay, I need to contribute as much as I can towards the flat, all the extra fees that popped up from that. So I do need to go back into contributing back into my pension, because it's been what, 5-6 months that I haven't yet. Well, haven't or paused on. So going back into that is definitely what I need to do.
Yes. Okay. Well, very honest of you. I'm sure you will. And also being a pensions person myself, I will be checking after this. I'm just going to diary it now for next month.
Good.
And is there, what would you say that your sort of core, what are those things that are just who you are that you think make you so good at what you do now? Things that you've had, there's some characteristics that we've had since children. And you might not have known it at the time, but you're now like, yeah, that's one of the reasons that makes me so good at what I do now.
I'm not great at bigging myself up, I'll be real. However, I would say I'm very extroverted. As I think that definitely helps me in all aspects, in terms of being able to fake confidence on stage, meet people, network. So I think that's really helped in terms of my business and just, being able to get out there and create the network I've had. And I also think I'm quite disciplined. I definitely get that from my mum, because lots of people often say, like, gosh, how are you motivated to work if you work for yourself? And I was like, if you need to get food on the table, you will be disciplined and you will make it work. So I think extrovertedness and discipline, I think, help grow all things money for sure.
That's a good combination, extrovert and discipline. And what difference do you think that what you do and those bringing that extrovert, disciplined person into your business, into All About Money, what difference do you think that makes to people's lives?
I hope it gives them the confidence to do the same. I think because of the way I talk about money and I talk about it in a relatable aspect. I mean, I'm 28, I love to socialize, I've bought my first property and I've invested. I think hopefully people see that relatability and context, and they're like, oh, if Ola's done that, then I can do that. Or, I encouraged my sister to start investing at 18. So I share that story often now. So I like to kind of hope that, with sharing these things, people are like, oh, Ola's done that, her sister's done that, her community have done it, I can as well. So hopefully bringing in that relatable factor helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely one thing I'd say is very clear about you. And you can see just what an asset you are to the profession, because you're so relatable. You're so refreshingly honest and candid. I feel like you're here setting a new standard, and also doing that by setting up your own business as well. So it's not just the personal finance element, I think, that people can really relate to and appreciate. It's going to just continue up and up and upwards for you, Ola.
I hope so. I really do hope so. So watch this space.
Well, I definitely will be. Hopefully, I think anyone listening. So just want to say a huge thank you for your time today. And as I said, having such a beautifully honest conversation with us about this.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
NewIn Podcast, supported by Royal London, the lead sponsor of the Verve Foundation.
Hello Dave, welcome to the NewIn Podcast.
Hello Cathi, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm good. I genuinely feel like your background's a bit of a Verve background. We always have like the lovely greenery. I feel like you need to come and like you're in the room next door.
Maybe I am in the room next door.
Dun dun dun. Plot twist. Thank you very, very much for coming on the episode. So obviously in the NewIn Podcast, we alternate between episodes discussing new talent, people choosing careers in financial services, and then ones for those who are financial advisors looking to start their own business. So this is our career-focused one. A big part of careers in finance is obviously qualifications. So do you want to start by just kind of introducing yourself, your business, a bit about your kind of background?
Yeah, sure, no problem at all. So I am David Tait. I am the founder and managing director of Redmill Advanced. So I think, like everybody else, I fell into financial services, Cathi. Doesn't everybody? Do you make a conscious choice? I think people do now, but certainly I kind of fell into the industry. So I got my first mortgage in 1997. I think my financial advisor at the time, I think he got a kickback, if I'm being honest, for introducing people back into who he worked with, which was Canada Life. And he said to me, how do you fancy being a financial advisor? And I thought, I'm probably ready for a career change, so why not? So I actually got a mortgage that day and a brand new career. So that was, it was kind of cool. And that's genuinely how I got into the industry.
So you got a mortgage and a job when you started a business. What freebie did you get with the business? Did you get like something like a protection policy?
Well, I got my mortgage. I'm glad to say that I got my first mortgage. So what did I get when I joined the bit? Did I get a freebie? I think I got, do you know what? I think I got some pens and a pad of paper on my first day or something like
golf
that.
Umbrella.
So that was, it was kind of cool. And that's genuinely how I got into the industry. I was introduced by, my financial planner way back in 1997. I'm glad to say, by the way, that the journey to setting up a training and development business was a little bit more purposeful. The first business I ran was established in 2012, was in fact a recruitment business, and it was delivering people into wealth management companies. And at the time, I remember thinking, what would really differentiate us as an organisation? And I thought, well, wealth management companies, putting financial advisors in there, bit of a light bulb moment. Why don't we offer financial services training? And Redmill Advance was born. And I've just grown it, I've kind of grown that. And the business is, it's gone from strength to strength really over the years. So
from the qualification side in particular, so obviously you've got kind of the broader training as well. I know there's soft skills and things included, but I think for people who aren't yet in finance and are maybe thinking about a career in finance, but are thinking, I don't know, like how daunting the qualifications would be. Maybe they're thinking, I wasn't very good in maths at school. Is like, do I need to be really good with numbers? I guess what's your overarching take on moving into a career in finance and what the qualifications process can look like for people?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing probably to say is that actually at its core, I think you'll agree, right? Financial services, being an advisor, it's a people business, right? Being able to actually engage with the people that you're working with over years. So I think, when you think qualifications, it can kind of at first glance probably feel like a little bit of a barrier, but it really isn't. And look, it's a profession, right? So you kind of expect qualifications are going to have to be part of it. You wouldn't, be an accountant or a lawyer or a chartered surveyor without qualifications, and financial services no different really, right? But don't be scared by it. And look, the qualifications, we're not talking about kind of university level qualifications here. They're level 4, so they really are accessible to anybody from any background. And actually, there's loads of support out there from training providers like ourselves, the Verve Foundation, And remember as well that qualifications are just the ticket to the game. I mean, it's a little bit like getting your driving license, isn't it? It's like getting on the road is one of those necessary things. Getting your qualifications is one of those necessary things. But actually, it's more than that. It is about those soft skills and behaviours. So I guess what I would say is qualifications are an essential part of joining the industry, obviously, a level 4 qualification. You're ultimately giving people advice on finances. What I tend to find when people think about qualifications in the industry is that it's always far scarier thinking about them than it is actually practically doing them. So tons of support out there as well.
Oh, there is, definitely. I know you said there, like, it's not degree level qualifications, it's kind of level 4. And obviously, if people are listening that don't know about finance and weren't here back in 2012, so before 2012, it didn't even need to be level 4. And there was this whole kind of hoo-ha, wasn't there, as we brought in this level 4. In your opinion, is level 4 qualifications like high enough for a financial advisor? Do you think because sometimes there's been talk about pushing it up to you need to be chartered, you need to be level 6, which is more akin to a degree. What's your views?
That is such a good question, isn't it? That feels a little bit loaded as well. So
cheeky, aren't
is level 4 the right level of qualification? I think that, obviously when you come into the industry, level 4 is the required qualification. So QCA level 4, right? You come in, that's your ticket to the game. But when you're in there, you can progress to chartered, right? So level 6. And actually for many, chartered is where a lot of financial advisors head. Do I think that level 4 should be the entry level, or should it be a little bit higher, like level 6? I think that level 4 qualification is probably the right level for where the market is today. And the reason that I say that is that if we increase the barriers of entry any higher, it will make the problem that we have in the market currently even worse, because we have this advice gap where there's not enough financial advisors in the market to satisfy consumer advice. And that's just a fact, right? 35,000 advisors currently, but 18 million people needing advice, bit of a gap there. So I think if you ask me, do I think level 4 is the right level for today in terms of the way the industry is and some of the problems we're facing? I absolutely do. But at the same time, I'm an absolute believer that people should try and progress to level 6 when they're in as well.
Oh, nice. Oh, good politician's answer. You know, if you ever get bored of finance and training, yeah? So one of the things that came up in the interview with Ola, so she, we very first spoke to her back in 2021, and she was what I think is like termed a finfluencer, and I know there's like so much stigma around that term now. But actually, one of the things that, you know, we've been pondering and she was talking about is what, in terms of this kind of advice gap and people getting advice or understanding finance, how do you tally up making it so that it's interesting to them, making it so that it's on Instagram where, you know, the young people in particular are, but keeping it technical, keeping it accurate, keeping it regulated where it needs to be? Like, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that kind of balance.
Well, that's the thing though, right? So like if you look at the industry as a whole, because it's a great point that you're making around sort of, I guess, young people. Can I say that? I can. I'm 51, right? So I can talk about young people, it's fine. But like, how do you make it more attractive for young people to come into the industry? And actually you look at the way it is just now, it's just this aging demographic, right? I mean, so widely publicised, 55 plus. And conversely on those stats, there are less than 200 people under the age of 25 in the industry today, according to the research I was reading. I mean, that's mad. And it's about, as you've just said, how are we attracting those young people into the industry? What mediums are we using? Finfluencers is a great example that you just gave. Obviously, there is a balance to be had there. But actually, how do we make the industry more attractive for those individuals? So I think that it's hard. It's a really hard one for me, because you say, what are your thoughts? I think we need to do a lot more at university level, maybe even at school level, to be educating people on, you know, why financial services is such a kind of cool career, because it is, right?
I think you do make a couple of good points there. So I think as financial services, like, we can only physically take it so far, partly because of regulation, partly, you know, just life. And actually some of the gap is that people outside of finance, or people not yet educated or understanding finance, like that, they need to be coming closer. That gap needs to be getting kind of bridged between us getting better at communicating it and making it more you know, interesting to lay people, but actually if they're not even picking this stuff up in school or uni, then, you know, it's too big a gap for us to bridge entirely on our own. So if you and I talk about a financial planner or a financial advisor, or we talk about a financial coach, or we talk about a finfluencer, like, we know the differences between all of them. We would know the difference between a regulated advisor and a chartered financial planner, or whatever it might be. But there's such this breadth of, you know, super regulated, super technical, actually qualified and authorised to give advice, through to coaches, through to kind of influencers. Do you think, it's a bit like the is level 4 high enough question, like, do you think it's right that there's such a breadth? Like, does that range help bring more people into finance and to engage with it? Or is it almost like adding to the confusion? Is there too much option?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think it's probably a good thing, right? So I think that anything that brings awareness to the market around financial planning isn't a bad thing, is it? And that can come in many forms, right? At the same time, Cathi, I think you've got to balance that, right, with the reality of it can also be a little bit dangerous, because the whole point of financial planning and regulatory qualifications is it's laying a kind of, you know, stake in the ground to say that you have to have a certain level of training, a certain level of qualification to deliver financial advice. Now, that starts with the level 4 qualification, but of course it doesn't end there, because you have to go through a kind of competent process with the employer that you're eventually going to work with. They take you through and sign you off as being competent to deliver that advice. So when you know, from a finfluencer perspective, It's great that it's bringing awareness, but I do think there's a danger at the other end, depending on what they're saying, that it can cross that line of almost, if people are listening to that and taking advice on from some of that stuff that's been said. But I mean, in terms of your question, do I think it's good for the industry? I think anything that brings awareness probably is. And I think that the more of that stuff that's out there isn't a bad thing.
So the opening fact from this podcast, which wraps it up nicely, was that Ola, so the other guest that we have, was that she was on our podcast in 2021, so it kind of ties the whole thing together. And so I tend to try and end on a question that's linked to my opening fact. And you've been on a few podcasts recently, haven't you? I feel like you're doing like the podcast rounds. So my question to you is, which is your favourite podcast that you've been on?
Oh, so far the Verve, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, this is like, honestly, thank you. You've asked all the big questions. But no, it's been a lot of fun, actually, Cathi. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And anybody who is thinking about doing their exams and looking for some support, I can 100% recommend Redmill. Anybody who's looking to potentially get into financial services, go onto the Verve Foundation website, have a look at our new talent programmes. There's loads of different ways into it. But a massive thank you to David for joining us. Massive thank you to Royal London for sponsoring, and for everybody for listening and watching and no doubt sharing and giving it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. So thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Cathi. It's been great.
See you
Appreciate
soon.
it.
If you're interested in joining one of our advisor programmes or being a supporter of our mission, then head on over to vervefoundation.co.uk.